Welcome everybody to Rob's MetalWorks. We are out here at the Rock Box in downtown San Antonio to support one hell of a thrash show. We had to come out to support the guys that we love from LA. The band called WARBRINGER is back in San Antonio, and I have with me the man, John Keevil, one of the most distinctive voices in thrash metal. John, great to have you back on our show.
Well, thanks for the kind words. Happy to be here. Happy to be back in San Antonio for the God knows how manyth time. We've been all over North America for about as longer than I can remember now.
John, lots of things to talk about with WARBRINGER. I want to take a little step back before we start talking about your new record. There was a time period in 2014, just a few years ago, when really the future of WARBRINGER was kind of up in the air. You were like the mainstay. You know, there were some lineup changes. I know there had been discussions of putting WARBRINGER down. You decided not to do that. When did you decide? Why did you decide to continue WARBRINGER? What made you keep that fire burning for the band?
It was more than a discussion. Putting the band down was entirely the logical and smart thing to do, probably. I had lost 3 members. Adam had actually rejoined for the Empire's Collapse tour, which is the only record in the band's discography Adam Carroll wasn't on. He did all the touring for it, because Jeff Potts quit, did the touring for World's Furnace Under, like the second half, and then quit right as Empires came out. And this kind of, really what this stemmed from is John Locks hadn't wanted to do it for a while. John Locks being one of the other primary songwriters and the guy which I got all my ideas on the record through. So I was really shook up by that, and it kind of create a chain reaction of other people just losing faith in the band and project and leaving. And what really sucked is this was all as the band commercially was starting to really gain some ground and gain some headway. So right as we're about to hit the top of the hill, give up, quit is kind of what happened. And that was crushing for me, man, because I'd worked toward non-stop for 6 years to get it to where it was, and so much work. But I guess I had these ideas. Honestly, some of the songs on the new records were in my head then, and I kept thinking about them, so I had to make them. I had this impulse to do it. I thought, well, if I buried WARBRINGER, that's kind of it for me in music, because I just do the voice I do, and that's WARBRINGER. So what am I gonna do? You can't really be more thrashy than we are, certainly not easily. And a less thrashy version of us, who the hell would want to hear that? I'm a brutal, vicious thrash vocalist. That's what my aim is anyway. And I want, it's just, this is my musical vision, and I wouldn't really have it any other way. I wouldn't change it. So my only choice was either don't play music or this. And honestly, the fan base of WARBRINGER and just thrash metal heads of the world really, when I put that up, hundreds of people wrote and were just I love this about this, and keep it going, and so you kind of have to. What else am I going to do that makes an effect on that many people, where that many people give a damn about something I'm doing because I want to, and it's, self-expression and fun to yell at shit and write songs.
It seems now, as we sit here in 2017, WARBRINGER is back at a really strong place now. You have a good lineup, then we're going to talk a little bit about that. But when Empires came out, you kind of had this kind of some people who were just touring with the band just to get you guys out there. And then there was that 4-year time period between Empires and Woe to Vanquished. Again, that during that time, is that what kind of caused the delay? You trying to get new people to really commit to being in WARBRINGER full time? Yeah,
and people that can do it. It's not easy music to play, particularly on drums, and it's just really strenuous. And some people who do shred are these really sterile, bedroom guys who aren't the right fit for it, and then some of the hardcore thrasher dudes don't have the technique to do some of the trickier, more prog or extreme metal influence stuff we do. And you really, honestly, the only musicians who really are right for it at this point are the core of this record was me, Adam, and Carlos, guys that already were in the band that already knew it. I don't think anyone else could to that extent. Jesse and Chase, the 2 newer members for Vanquished, they sagged in and wrote their parts mainly, but with cooperation from me, Adam, and Carlos, who wrote the songs collectively. So that's why it's
core of it.
Yeah, and I managed to re-get that core after losing it. What happened was I had a stopgap lineup involving a few dudes basically from the local area who were just there for a few months, and then they all bailed, actually leaving us. And that's actually what brought Carlos Cruz back in the band, is because I didn't ask him, I was too proud, but he heard through the grapevine that this was happening, and like showed up, talked to me, said like, hey, where are you at? And if we're doing it, we do it like this. And so him and I made an agreement, and from that on, he kind of like, he and I developed a really strong partnership when before, we worked together, but it wasn't like that. Yeah, so we became like closer brothers from him rejoining and reigniting his passion for the music as well. And also just seeing like, well, if he doesn't, I think he came to a spot where he's like, well, look, Keevil's trying to keep it going, Adam's trying to keep it going. The band still has fans. If he doesn't step in now, like the name is lost and it won't be there again. And I think he, in his couple years off, rediscovered his love for doing it,
Is that also during the time period when you guys were committed to that Enforcer tour? That was when Conan from Ex Mortis toured with you guys?
Yeah, we didn't actually have a full lineup then, because it was me and Adam ever since the Empire's lineup disintegrated. Me and Adam were there the whole time, and then these three guys from our local area joined. We spent months and months training them. We did a couple a short Asian tour and a short South American tour. The South American tour went badly, and because that can happen, it can be sketchy, and it was just really, really stupidly organized, honestly. It could have been good at every potential to be. The guy who's running it was just an idiot, and I don't know how we ended up with it that way. But at any rate, so that went bad. And these guys, who had never really toured before, all quit right after, despite the fact that they had agreed to this Enforcer tour. And that's why I'm not going to mention their fucking names, because they don't deserve it. Right. They never record on a... Well, who cares if they don't? Yeah. These guys fucking bailed, and to me that was a dishonorable move to agree to a tour and then not do it and leave. What if Carlos didn't rejoin? What if I wasn't able to put together a lineup there? It would just be a huge embarrassment and probably would bury the band and all these records we did and all the music for good. It would have killed us from an industry standpoint. So it was a miracle we were able to pull it off. And, kind of a fuck you to these guys for leaving me in that situation. But at the same time, it worked out for the best, because that was all the catalyst for bringing back this version of Warbringer. We had already, between Adam and I, we had already written a couple, or like the skeletons of some of the Vanquish tracks, like the title track and Descending Blade were basically written, because those are all Adam riffs. And so we started building on those with Carlos brought into the fold, though we were actually able to finish him and the way we wanted to, because working with these other musicians, I wasn't so happy with. Each of them wanted to steer it their own way, and I'm thinking in the back of my head, what the hell? Like, what's best for this band you just joined? Right. Fuck you, Right. So I kind of got to regain some control of the direction, and on Vanquished, I really got to, for the image, the aesthetic, and the themes, to really run with it and actually to have more say and vision on that record than anything we've done before. And I think it's a mixture of the fact that I flew the flag for the band for so long when pretty much no one else was there, though full credit to Adam Carroll, who was there for almost the band's whole career. And a mixture of that and the fact that I'd done a lot of study, and I just had a better idea what I wanted to say, and I wrote 4 albums. So if you're writing and you're working on music and you're not improving yourself, get the fuck off the stage is kind of my attitude. I always hate to see how many great bands have got successful and then get lazy and started sucking, and I just stopped caring about them entirely. And I always said to myself when I was a kid getting into this, when I have a band, that's never gonna happen. We're gonna make bitchin', speeding records that get faster and more intense and more heavy until we're out of ideas, and then we couldn't. I'm not out of ideas yet, though. I'm working on the next one already up here.
And that definitely rang true with Woe to Vanquished. Definitely a record that came out. People were anticipating it because people had finally realized, John's got a great band behind him now. We got some classic members back in. this record is heavier and brutal than probably a lot of what the most heaviest and brutal that you've probably ever done, but yet also delivering some new things with some melody and some darker side, kind of near like the latter half of the record. Talk a little bit about what differentiates Woes compared to what you've done in the past.
Well, basically, when we wrote Whoa, we had a kind of vision for what we wanted to do after Empires. Now, Empires was envisioned as the record. It was like us yelling at the world, stop comparing us to 80s thrash, please. You know, that is the root of our sound, that is the spirit. But sonically, we've been really different from that since the second album. Waking Worlds and Empires and Vanquish, there's nothing in 80s thrash that I am aware of that sounds very much like it, both in the drum and riff style as well as the vocals, I believe. I think the influences are there, but I think we've grown quite a distance from them in terms of how it actually sounds. And I got really sick, and the whole band got really sick of being called a retro band and being like, we're paying tribute. We never wanted to fucking pay tribute to anyone. We wanted to write bitchin' songs with our fucking name on it. And from day one, we never fucked around playing covers. We didn't care for that. And fuck this idea of like, the gods, they're just dudes who wrote good songs. And I like those good songs, and so I'll listen to those, enjoy them, and try to write music that makes me feel the way I heard when I heard them. And that's all I can say for the spirit, you know? I'm not into this celebrity worship bullshit and listening to the same like 5 bands for eternity because, you know, they were some of the first ones in the 80s or whatever. Like, I'll every song merit-based, always. Time is irrelevant, only quality of music matters.
And let's talk. There's so many great songs in this record. Obviously, one of my favorites, "Remain Violent," is one of my favorite songs. Obviously, "Silhouette" was the first single. But we have to talk about the 11-minute opus that ends out the record. A track that probably no one had ever anticipated from a band like WARBRINGER. Let's talk a little bit about that track.
Well, I guess like I was just saying, we were trying to take the Empires was our like step away from, you know, our statement on that record was basically like, hey, we are our own band, look at all this different musical content. Clearly, you know, if you're just going to say like, hey, it's like Slayer, well, you're missing a lot of shit. But the thing with Empires is it included kind of a direction from every member in the group on a different song. So in retrospect, my criticisms of that record are 2. One is I think sonically it's not as heavy as the others, not in terms of the actual composition, but in terms of the guitar sounds. But the thing and 2 is I think it's a little unfocused. However, there's a side to it that's like dark melodic side. A lot of the Carlos Cruz compositions on there that really brought a kind of new dark melodic element to thrash, like Hunter Seeker, for instance. And stuff like When the Guns Fell Silent, Spectral Asylum, Divinity of Flesh, parts on the title track, Woe to the Vanquished, stuff like that is really a nod to like that dark melodic progressive side that we brought to the fore on Empires. We had a bit of it on Worlds and a bit of it on Waking, just a bit, but we decided that that's the element on that record full of experiments that we really wanted to run with. So the theory on Vanquish was pretty much to take that dark progressive melodic element and combine it with just like the ruthless ripping death thrash that you hear on like War Waking Worlds, you know? Guns Fell Silent, though, it's something I kind of always wanted to do. I always wanted to do a gigantic epic song because I love, you know, just old heavy metal bands. Like fucking Maiden does it all the time, and I always loved the big conceptual epics. So it's kind of, I always wanted to do a song like that, but we never did because we're such a for the throat kind of band. But Vanquish, the subject matter went much more into this like epic kind of civil, you know, historical and present, like civilizational philosophy is really the best way I could sum it up as an umbrella that encompasses everything that's on that record. And Guns Fell Silent is my epic, you know, it's kind of inspired by a bunch of the World War I soldier poets. There's a Siegfried Sassoon bit in the beginning, because these are guys who wrote in like high romantic language, but about just hell on earth conditions and the utmost spiritual desolation, like probably almost no one alive could feel. So it's got this wonderful dichotomy between like the real beauty of the language used and the soul-crushing nature of the subject. And I wanted to get that vibe in a song. So musically, the stuff we were looking at was some mixture of like Bathory, Blood, Fire, Death, the song, or you know, one of the big Bathory epics, one of the big Iron Maiden epics like Hallowed, Mariner, you know, Alexander, any of those, and like the biggest tracks on And Justice for All, To Live Is to Die, the title track, those ones. Yeah. We're kind of thinking in those spheres, and we're thinking, you know what? That's all stuff that's like already related to our music. So it didn't, as much as no one saw that coming, it was like, to us it seemed really logical, and it just came together. I had just the title, and I talked to Carlos about like the time period in the literature and showed him all these fucking poems and things till he was sick of it, because but he got it, and he helped write the riffs and everything. We took a riff from Adam. That one was really collaborative between Adam, Carlos, and me, and even Chase actually wrote some of the parts on there too, because Adam and Chase got together to write that whole instrumental section. Right. We planned it as like a 7 or 8 minute song, but after they wrote that long instrumental section, it turned into like 10:45. And there's a cool little tidbit here. The First World War, which is the subject of it, When the Guns Fell Silent, is this epic poetic thing that was said when the Great War ended, because all the cannons literally stopped firing at a certain second when the armistice was called. And they had been nonstop for 4 years, so it was literally like it's a very strange moment in time, and it just blows my mind to imagine what it might have felt like then. Like you can hear birds again. That hadn't been for 4 years because only cannons could be heard. And I thought that's so grim and morbid and poetic and everything, and I just wanted to capture like that sense of spiritual desolation and the idea that like, whoa, we have just entered an entirely new world. Whatever just happened, it will utterly change everything, and nothing will be left of the world before it. And truthfully, that's how it was. That's the birth of the modern world, the age which we are currently living in. Yeah. The fact that it's largely forgotten and ignored too adds to the sadness and that feeling I get, especially like the end part of the song, which is really different from anything we've done because it's just solo guitar and vocal. And so it's one of my favorite vocal moments on there, because some of the demands of a song like this forced me to push myself as both a vocalist and a lyricist.
When I think people also kind of have heard through the grapevine that you have that wonderful perspective now, because you are a student of history and now becoming a master in learning about history as a student and working towards an academic degree in history.
Yes, it's something I've done for pretty much my whole life, and it's so honestly in a lot of my I'm in my bachelor's right now, so I can't say I'm too far ahead. I can't give you any great credential, but I do read about this stuff a lot, and I think about it a lot, and it hits me on kind of an emotional level. I've sort of learned to, in some ways I relate to stories from the past or people from far away, or just like people who wrote good stuff than the average person I meet on the street, for whatever reason, probably my own social disconnect that causes me to play this angry music in the first place. But I always thought that I think that there's a lot to see there, and it's a really just powerful story, and it's kind of my aim in music in telling these things, to not really give you dates, names, places. I think that's lectures are for that, or like when you want to know that, but I want something that if you have no idea what it is, that you can get of my interpretation of how it feels when I read these stories. And I think that's the way music should approach these kind of topics, as a means to channel the emotion of an event or the meaning of it rather than the event itself.
I saw some of the videos that you guys did in the studio. You guys did the record at West Valley Studios in LA, is that correct, in LA?
Yeah, in the San Fernando Valley. It's actually right by where we live. Super convenient. It was wonderful.
And you guys did the record with Mike Plotnikov. Plotnikov.
Good Russian name.
Yeah. What was this studio experience like? It looked like you guys were having a good time in there working.
Easy going. I mean, we'd all go home every night. Previously when we did a record, we'd have to go somewhere and like Motel 6 it every night. And it wasn't too comfortable. But here we'd go home every night, meet in the morning, work on the record all day, repeat, take like one day off a week. And Mike Plotnikov is kind of like a real chill, sort of hippie kind of dude, and we're California boys too, so we do well with that. We're similar, And him and I would always have these great talks. He's a guy that likes me, when he hears music, he thinks of a picture. So I'm really big on that. That's why I guess you'll see I always try to have like a story in the songs and everything, because and a setting, kind of like Iron Maiden always did.
Yeah.
And so I found a natural ease in talking to him about my thoughts on the music because he saw it very similarly. So only good things to say, and it's almost certain that we're probably going to do the next record same way.
Great. He had great accolades about you guys too. I saw that. He said great things about working with you guys. Now, this record is the debut on Napalm Records. Talk a little bit about how the deal happened with Napalm. How have things been going so far with the label?
Well, basically, it's nothing too fantastically interesting, but more or less what happened is during the collapse, after Empire's collapse, funny, I didn't want that to be a representative of the band, but it turned out to be shit. We had a 4-album deal with Century Media. Empire's Collapse was our 4th record, as is stated in the title, and we couldn't re-sign the deal. We were offered to re-sign the deal. We didn't. There's a shitty thing about that too, which is if you don't re-sign with a record label prior to the release of your last record on the deal, it gets the shitty release. And Empire's consequently sold less well than the 3 previous records, despite the band being a much higher profile than it was. So that was a bummer. And it really stung. All this happening at once just really depressed me for a while. And it made it really hard to get back on my feet. But fortunately, Napalm Records had an interest in us since Waking into Nightmares, and they stepped in and took us. We actually got rejected by a couple labels, and like Metal Blade and Nuclear Blast both had no interest in working with us and considered us dead and gone. But we are not.
Right.
We are not, and I don't think either of those labels have put out a thrash release as brutal as what we just did. So, Napalm got us, and the next one will be even heavier, and Warbringer will keep trucking on regardless of which label supports it. We'll always get someone to do it because we're only going to bring the absolute highest quality of extreme thrash metal possible, and we'll never settle for anything less than being the most extreme band in the entire genre.
Awesome. You guys have always been road dogs, though. You're always working hard. You've been on this track with Dark Tranquility now since the beginning of September as we sit here, in October. How's this run been going so far for the band?
Pretty damn good. Real smooth. It seems like there's one hiccup, really, and that seemed to use up all our bad karma, which was we started the tour in Florida right as the hurricane was about to hit. So we canceled a few shows, and after that, it's been completely smooth sailing. We're sharing a bus with Dark Tranquility. Wonderful people, wonderful musicians, and it couldn't be much smoother, honestly. It's about as easy as it can get, which it needs to be, because I'm almost at about 30 shows with 1 day off so far. Every single day.
How's the throat holding up?
About as good as it ever has. Better than it has in the past. We have pretty good living conditions and not too many headaches, so that helps. I'm really tired all the time, and I pretty much just nap and play games on my phone, read stuff all day long, and try to eat. That's my plans are so ambitious now, but it's all
rock and roll, huh?
For me, I'm here for one purpose. My own enjoyment and everything is secondary to nailing the fucking show. We're playing this whole record live every single night. It's a really challenging record to play on pretty much any instrument, and certainly pushes me as a vocalist to perform this material I wrote, and especially getting Divinity of Flesh, all the high parts towards the end of the after 6 songs before that also all have a bunch of shrieks and shouting and rapid fire shit, and very endurance intensive. But I've taken to a lot of just exercise, stretching, breathing, yoga shit, and even I'm learning a lot better how to take care of myself to sustain 30 shows with 1 day off. I'm pretty happy with it. I keep being kind of worried about my performance, but everyone I'm asking says I'm doing really well. So I think that's the right attitude to have as a musician. Is just you want to really put your absolute 100% out every night, and I care more about that than partying or fucking around or doing anything really. If I have to sleep 23 hours a day to do that one the way it sounds on the record, that's what I'm gonna do. You know,
you've always been you have that reputation. John Kevill has a reputation of giving 150% on stage, and people know that.
Yeah. John Kevill does what John Kevill does, because the James Cameron thing, South Park.
So what does the rest of this year hold for the band, or what do you want to do?
We're starting to wrap up the year and the first phase of the Vanquished album cycle. We've still got a few things coming. We're doing this Ozfest First Not Fest date in California. We're playing the second day. We also are doing a West Coast run with Darkest Hour and Ex Mortis.
Cool.
So there's that. Interestingly, Ex Mortis just hit a situation kind of like Warbringer did, where they lost a couple members. So if you're on the West Coast and you see that tour, Chase Becker and Carlos Cruz will be doing double duty and also playing in Ex Mortis, just like Conan did for us that one tour. Well, it is. Those guys are our brothers, and if you haven't heard of them, I highly endorse them. Conan, Yadrin Gonzalez is one of the best guitar players in metal today. Shredder. Absolute shredder. And deserves the support of anybody who likes to bang their head at all. So we're happy to help out our brothers. Sure. You know, on this level of metal, it's not something very lucrative. It's not something very easy. It's definitely a labor of love, and I have a lot of respect for the people like them and like my own bandmates and like many others out there that keep going for a love of what they do. Fundamentally,
continue to persevere.
Yes. Well, there's no other option. Without that stubborn perseverance, this music doesn't exist. Right. It's as simple as that.
John, thank you, sir, for such a great interview. You've been great to talk to. Thank you for sharing so much and giving so much of yourself and being so enthusiastic as you talk about Warbringer. Is there anything, sir, anything that we missed, anything that you want to share with the fans around the world who will see this interview?
We love you guys. Thanks for supporting our music. Keep it fast, keep it heavy. I like how you said giving so much of yourself. That's really what I want to do. It's not my mission to profit or to get something from doing this. It's honestly because I write these songs with my esteemed colleagues of musicians, and we think they're cool, and we want, if other people enjoy them, we want to play for you, and with sweat, blood, everything we got, and show you what we think thrash metal fucking means.
Awesome. Thanks again, John. Remember, everyone out there, the brand new one from Warbringer is out there on Napalm Records. Be sure to look for it right now as you finish watching this interview. It's called Woe to the Vanquished, out on Napalm. You saw John Kevill only right here on Rob's MetalWorks.